CEO of a company called Retail Resilient, social selling for the car industry. And we help auto dealers, auto agencies, and vendors in the auto industry sell more cars, service more cars, and make more money using our social selling strategy. That includes TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and anything else you can think of. So if you're looking to invest thousands and make millions, we're definitely the social selling company for you. Like I said, who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
If you run a service drive, you know these days first impressions matter. But when your advisors are tied up with inbound phone calls, they tend to neglect their other, more important duties. And did you know 75% of all service calls are frequently asked questions and routine requests? Still, the average dealer misses up to 30% of inbound calls. 68% of callers actually go elsewhere if they can't get through, which means you could be losing $60,000 to $70,000 every month in service revenue. Introducing Brooke.
Hi there.
Your best service scheduling assistant. Brooke is the first intelligent digital voice assistant to answer, handle, and appoint all of your inbound service calls. Hiring Brooke means absolutely no call goes unanswered, boosting your customer satisfaction and reducing your overhead costs. And talking to Brooke is like talking to a friend, with human-level understanding and a friendly conversational voice.
Absolutely. I collect all necessary customer and vehicle information, as well as determining the reason for servicing the vehicle. I welcome new customers and recognize returning customers while updating their profile. I work with customers to find the best day and time for their appointment while always following your policies. And I can make appointment changes on the fly, updating your scheduling tool in real time.
With Brooke today.
Recently, we were concerned about our recon time and decided to look into reconditioning workflow software. After doing our research, I can confidently say we finally found the software that was right for us. We love that it packs robust data, control precision, clear communications, and performance accountability, all into my desktop or mobile, so I'm always in touch. Before this, we manually tracked our recon process. We just assumed we were doing okay. We were wrong. After someone in my 20 group told me he used this software to improve his recon time to sale to just 3 to 5 days, I just had to look into it. Their team of recon experts all have hands-on dealership experience. We all benefit from faster time to line, inventory turns, and competitive advantages. To learn more, visit rapidrecon.com.
All righty. Good morning. And we're going to our wonderful slide deck. So 1 second. Go ahead, Jeff.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. And we can't do this without our beloved sponsors. And they help make things happen for us. And so please, we urge everybody to visit them and see them and Retail Resilient. If you ever get a chance, check out Gail's TikToks. They're a lot of fun now. Yeah. And everybody else, Ian.
Yeah, and excuse my typo there. I'm going to have to fix that. Anyway, a few book recommendations based on the video today. Was really talking about the future of the car business. I know there's a lot of change, so I felt it made sense to really talk about technology and the automotive industry. And there's a couple books, 2030 by Mauro Gillen, Deep Tech by Eric Redmond, and The Future is Faster Than You Think by Peter Diamond. Go ahead with our disclaimer.
Our famous disclaimer we have to put in there, which covers our butt, which is the views and opinions of those of disclaimed today are those of our guest and not necessarily of the Auto Hub Show or Ian Nethercott or Jeff Polo. And we will continue on.
Thanks, Jeff.
So the Auto Hub Show is here. Today is the Tech and After Sales Show, and we're here to connect dealers with some of the best experts in the industry. And our mission statement is to basically let everybody connect, let them know what's going on, and not promote our services, although we're pretty awesome, but to promote something that's going on for out there to give them a good chance to pick up on some of the greatest things that we're finding out these days. And our show today is about after sales and tech, and where's it taken us? And considering of tech, we got some great people joining us today as guests. First of all, somebody who needs no introduction to the Auto Hub audience is Troy Glenn, the Director of Sales of Western Canada. In the US, that would be Southern California. CDK Global from Vancouver, BC. Hi, Troy. Troy, thanks for joining us. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Hey, everybody.
Topic.
Well, thanks for having me. As usual, guys, always nice to be back. Yeah, as far as the topic today, I mean, after sales technology is a space that I live in every single day. I'm excited to talk about this, especially, you know, all the challenges that the automotive industry is facing and the brighter light that it's shining on after sales at this point with it. So I don't want to blow up anyone's spot and start talking about that stuff, but I'm excited to talk about it more soon.
Fantastic.
Thank you. And of course, Stephen Granger joining us from Austin, Texas. Howdy, y'all. And and he's the founder and CEO of Recall Rapid, which when you talk tech and after sales, wow, what a great thing that is. Stephen, say hi. Tell us a little bit more about you and your company.
Good morning. Excited to be on the call. Again, my name is Stephen Granger. I'm the founder of Recall Rabbit. I've been in the space for over 20 years now, which hurts sometimes when I say that out loud. And done a lot of different things inside dealerships. I've been a manager of a 7-store group on the digital side of things. So have some perspective inside the store, what it's like to work at a dealership, and then as well as what we're doing now and helping dealers identify recalls and getting them in and getting them fixed. So excited to be on the call.
Terrific. We're excited to have you. And I have to say that recalls, wow, talk about low-hanging fruit for selling stuff to people in the back end, like, whew. And I'm sure you run into this fact that so many people go, when you talk about recalls. And
yes.
And every week we have our beloved platinum sponsor joining us, Gail Rubenstein from Retail Resilient. And when you talk tech in the automotive industry, she's covering almost it all. Pretty soon she can teach people how to connect to Recall Rabbit. Ian, take it away.
Yeah. Can a dealer succeed in after sales today without new technology? Why or why not? So let's start with Troy.
I think, you know, the technology that's out there, when you say new technology, and I don't know if that was part of the question or not necessarily, but there's a lot of great technology that's out there. And I know, Ian, you lived in that space for a time. I'm in it now. Obviously, Steven's in it. There's good technology out there that's now in its second and third and fourth generation of its iterations and is getting better and better. As far as can they succeed without it, it all depends on the kind of dealership. And why I say that is, if you're the only GM store in your town, let's say something in rural Saskatchewan or North Dakota, you're probably fine. But if you're competing in a major metropolitan area, like say here in Vancouver, where you're a 10-minute drive, or in some cases like out in Langley, you're across the street from the same OEM, you absolutely need to use technology to get that business and maximize on it. I mean, the critical part today is if there's a lack of inventory of cars to sell and there's a lack of staff to help you sell those cars or fix those cars or upsell those extra lines in the ROs, then you absolutely need to lean on technology to replace those humans in some cases.
Fantastic. Great answer. Steven, what do you think?
Yes, I'm going to say that because I sell technology. But I think the question makes me think about a previous life I had. I worked for Carfax and I handled large dealer groups. And one of the top 5 groups in the country, I had an interesting conversation with them at one point. They were looking at 2 different vendors for something other than what we did. And he had half the stores that they had out of 200 had one vendor, half the stores had the other vendor. And of course, each vendor was trying to get the other half. And he said something to me that I thought really stuck with me. And he said, part of us changing means retraining everybody. So I'm going to have to be down for 6 months on whichever half I choose to switch to. And so I think, yes, you need technology, but I also think the human element engaging with that technology is just as important. And you know what Troy said about replacing the people that you maybe not have in the dealership anymore. Yes, but it has to be effective at doing that. And it's only as good as the people that are utilizing the software, right? It's like, just like we've all been in the space for long enough. I mean, if you are efficient at what you do, technology makes you more efficient and better at it. If you're inefficient and not good, yeah, it's going to help a little bit, but it still depends on the people running it. So.
Understood. I mean, I think when you look at it, it's a great point. When I looked at in a previous life, I worked for a company called DRFX, and we were retraining service departments who their latest high-tech tool was a clipboard to using tablets and other pieces of technology, including trying to train technicians to shoot video of cars, which was quite interesting to see the points of view. But you know, when you're hand bombing a piece of paper with an inspection with a pen, and I give you a tablet, some of the technicians were like, what is this that I'm doing here? Like it was kind of like their first experience with a desktop computer, I guess. But it was kind of interesting because I had a dealer I remember in Florida, and one of the older technicians was like, "I think I'm gonna retire. Like I don't think I could handle another change." I thought that was really interesting. But go ahead, Jeff.
Actually, it was very interesting, Troy. You brought up something when you were talking there, and also one of the people in the opening video, and kind of brought out the fact between rural and urban dealers. And we're going to start to see, I think we're going to start to see such a big difference in that. And, you know, the urban people will be, you know, I don't know about flocking, but going to EVs. And the rural people, you know, when you're out literally in Nowheresville, Texas, which I don't know if there still is anymore with all the people that are there. And, you know, your EV pickup, all of a sudden you forgot to plug it in, or you have a, you know, your electrical, whatever it is, 500 miles away, shuts down. What are you going to do? So I think the gas and EV thing is an issue. That being said, rural, urban, other than your products, and I mean, a little tough to say that with CDK because frankly, you guys got a few products. But other than your products, and of course, Retail Rabbit, Stephen, what is the one technology, in your opinion, a dealer cannot do without in after sales and fixed ops, etc.?
Yeah. I would say, and I think Troy touched on it too, the lack of inventory. I can't imagine somebody not using some sort of data mining tool for acquisitions, right? Something that helps them identify what other customer, like Auto Alert or Red Hat or whatever those other companies are. I think if I was in a store, I can't imagine not figuring out how to use technology more effectively to get cars right now. Yeah.
And what about what about in the back end?
Yeah, I think on the service side, what we've seen a huge sea change and increases texting and the ability to text. And I think the underlying thing of all of this, I was thinking about earlier in the earlier question, is we've started doing a lot of kind of data mining of DMS data. And I'm shocked. I guess I shouldn't be shocked when I say that, but like how bad the data is for the customer. Like how many emails are clearly made up because someone's like, oh, they didn't want to give me their email. And it kind of goes back to my point of training. I think people need to be trained of the importance of collecting that data and making sure it's the correct data for the betterment of them and their job and everybody in the dealership. Because if they don't have the right information in the systems, they're not going to work properly. So I would say, to answer your question, texting and the ability to have a good communication path with customers using technology.
Interesting that you brought up that thing about email. I can't even register to get a 10% off coupon. Oh God, I don't want to say this, at Bed Bath & Beyond, if my email is out by one letter. Yet we have dealers for years have been sending stuff to Joe Smith at gma1l.com. And they still have it on there when there's no such thing. So that's a very good point.
Oh yeah, I mean, but I think a lot of that, Jeff, is the word track. You know, so you obviously want to know about incentives and changes and recalls. Obviously, to talk about Stephen there, you'd want to know about that, or would you just not want to know about it? Like, I'm happy to like take your email or not, but most of my customers want to know about discounts and want to know if there's a recall on their vehicle. Is that you or your email is?
Yeah.
Like, how
And
do
that's what
you
I mean, the process internally inside a dealership, making them understand how important making sure they have valid data, not just making up an email address or whatever, or phone number. Like, that's the other thing, you know, like our system and any texting tool will identify whether it's a mobile or a landline, or if it's legal to text. And if you're putting in the wrong information, you could be risking, you know, your dealership and litigation.
Oh, you mean as we talked about on the show, dumb shit dealers do
Hey,
might be
hey.
text the wrong
No
number.
swearing in the Auto Hub show.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, it's very true. And we actually had come across somebody at one point in time that they had software that they were teaching salespeople when they met the customer, they immediately entered them into their phone and their data, and it went out to social media, to their email, to their text, and everything. And it never worked because I think they crumbled a lot later, but that's just bad management. But at least you get the right information. Troy, what's your opinion on this? Is there, other than what's in the CDK stable, which doesn't leave much, but by the way, I hear that Recall Rabbit can be bought out for just a short, $2 billion. So you should talk to them.
Hey, we like to buy things as a company, but in all seriousness, there's not a lot that we don't cover. So I'd like to speak generally and just say that I agree 100% with Steven about the texting piece. You need to be able to communicate with all your customers in the most rapid way possible. That's huge. The second thing is, again, with the data, we go and see the data inside of DMSs, and honestly, the biggest parts customer that is in every dealership is Mr. Cash. And again, because over-the-counter parts, people just aren't taking that data in, and they're losing some of that stuff out. So to talk about something that hasn't been said yet, I think the technology that people can't live without is, much like Steven said, the ability to buy and sell cars and grab extra cars for inventory. There are systems out there that help with parts. And right now, if you want to get, say, a rear window seal for your 2014 BMW 5 Series, and the only reason why I know that is because I had this problem, that part is ex-Germany. And right now, you can't get parts in any particular speed. There's people waiting, 3-4 weeks up to months for parts right now, especially if you have a European OEM car, because dealers don't want to stock a bunch of extra parts that might go obsolete. So the ability to have a networking piece, and there are a few companies out there that do this, where you can either post obsolete parts to people who might be interested, or pick up obsolete parts that are hard to get, like for that 1972 Buick Skylark that you keep talking about, Jeff. And by the way, one more thing, Bed Bath & Beyond is a 20% off coupon, and I'm proud to say that I get that all the time.
Oh man, I tell you, it's yeah. That is so annoying because they never leave you alone. Whenever my wife asks me to check something on her email and I take a look, she's got like 82,000 emails from all sorts of companies that she registered to get a coupon off or something like that.
And Jeff, it was our oversight. Tiffany's here from Brooke Ai and Proactive Dealer Solutions. So maybe Tiffany, you can introduce yourself and talk about Brooke. Go ahead.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, I thought for a second maybe no one could see me over here, but I appreciate you guys introducing me and for having me today. And don't worry, people call me Brooke all the time, so I know that can be very confusing, but I'm happy to be here. So thanks for having me. Yeah, been Proactive for just under 10 years now, and I love this topic today, and I'm super excited to be here talking about it because that's tech and after sales is why we created Brooke, is ultimately to help stores that kind of back to what Troy was saying, especially those stores with a lot of competition, have tools that drastically improve the customer's experience when they're trying to do business with us in service. And so, yeah, super excited to be here and be a part of the conversation.
So from a point of view of technology, and just to be 100% transparent, I worked for Proactive Dealer Solutions years ago when we were training call centers, and I'm sure you still do a little bit of that. Maybe you can talk a little bit about why a dealer would use, in addition to a BDC, or possibly as a supplement to a BDC, a tool like Brooke AI, and what that means to that dealer.
Yeah, so happy to. Great question. So just start off with what is Brooke.ai. So Brooke is a conversational intelligence tool, a digital voice assistant for service, similar to what you experience with an Alexa at home. Brooke can answer inbound calls, have an intelligent, human-like conversation with customers, and ultimately schedule appointments that are booked directly into that dealer's scheduling tool and or DMS. So we're capturing customers' information, we're connecting them and allowing them to self-serve, capturing their information, answering some questions, or ultimately scheduling appointments for them. So some of the things that have already been said about capturing information from the customer and saving it. To Stephen's point, technology is only as good as the people that are using it. And so, obviously we've worked with dealerships for a long time. We've implemented, developed sales and service BDCs of all sizes. And one of the biggest obstacles is teaching them how to really leverage the technology that they have, right? So capture the customer's contact information, use the word tracks that we're giving you, and ask them for their phone number and email address, and make sure that's put into the tool so that we can leverage that later through marketing, whatever the case may be. And still, so often it doesn't happen because BDC agents, you experience turnover in the BDCs. Maybe stores that don't have a BDC are leaning on advisors to answer the calls, or cashiers or receptionists that haven't been properly trained and they don't know to capture that information. With a tool like this, we're going to capture it automatically every single time, no matter what, because she's programmed a certain way, and the experience is consistent, it's the same. So not only email, but more importantly, mobile phone number. Because I too register for coupons and have in my personal email hundreds of emails that I never actually open, but the companies that send me promotions via text, I'm going to look at. I've already honestly looked at 2 since we've been on this call. So it's really important to capture that information and load it. Today, especially with COVID, we've obviously seen staffing issues. We've seen trouble staffing BDCs. We've seen difficulty in staffing advisor positions. And so it's really hard to just answer the phone. And as a consumer, it can be really frustrating when you call an organization and you can't get through to the department, just simply get through to the department that you're looking to do business with. And so we're here to support those stores that don't use a BDC, that can use the technology to handle the brunt of those inbound calls on behalf of the advisors, leaving them more available to focus on the customer that's in front of them. Or we're here to support those groups that have BDCs that are struggling with long hold times because of staffing issues. Or maybe those stores that have BDCs that are high functioning and don't have a problem, but they want a tool that can support them for after hours and holidays, because customers are calling in. We set hundreds of appointments on Thanksgiving Day using Brooke, the stores that were using Brooke, which was crazy. But from a consumer standpoint, we're all busy. That day is a day that maybe we think about that service appointment we need to make. We call the store, and to have an option that allows us to book is pretty cool. And I think an improvement to the consumer's experience and something they'll remember moving forward.
So is Brooke smart enough to realize that man or woman at 2 a.m. who's a little intoxicated calling?
Depending on how well they're still speaking, she might have to, ask a couple of clarifying questions, like, what are you calling to schedule a status? Are you checking on to schedule an appointment or checking on the status of your vehicle? Depending on how well they can still talk at that point, she can handle the call. I guess it depends on how intoxicated.
Understood. There's a show that I listen to on the radio and sometimes on TV or sometimes online out of the U.S. It's a radio station in Bellingham, Washington. They have an episode every day called Knuckleheads, and there was one today. This someone burned down their husband's house or shed or something.
Oh God.
Kind of funny, but yeah, crazy stuff. Anyway, Jeff, I just wanted to jump in there because obviously it was our oversight. I understand Lawson was double booked today, so sorry about that.
You guys are stuck with me instead.
Oh, that's okay. It's
We'd
all
much
good.
rather have you. We hear Lawson's not that great. Sorry, Lawson. No, that's great. When you when the introduction video there showed Brooke, it reminds me of an episode from Big Bang Theory where Raj falls in love with Siri and then discovers Siri's actually in a back room and talks and literally is a person.
I know that episode.
Yeah.
Great show.
Oh, it's just a fabulous show. But I apologize because my connection went really unstable there for a minute. So Tiffany, does your tool offer a Spanish option? Stephen's wondering.
Yeah, so that's on the roadmap for us for this year. Currently, she can recognize Spanish callers if they're speaking Spanish. She will actually respond to them in Spanish and say, "I'm so sorry, I don't speak Spanish." And she will ask them to speak English. And if they can't or they don't, she will then transfer that caller to a phone number that is designated for Spanish fallbacks. So that can typically go to team members there in the store. It can be sent to an outsourced BDC, whether it be ours or another provider that they're currently using for Spanish calls. The majority, we find though, because we have a lot of dealers in Southern Texas, Southern Florida, California, that have high volume of Spanish callers. And we find that the majority of them, when asked, do change and speak English, and she can understand even fairly thick accents too, and still ultimately schedule the appointment. So
what about bad English like French Canadians?
Not yet, but also on the roadmap. But yeah, she gets as long as they're speaking English, she'll be able to handle it. Depends on how thick it is, but French Canadians, on the plan after Spanish.
I want to tell you this. There's one thing that you need one word that you need Brooke to recognize in French Canadian, which is tabernacle, and I'm not going to continue from there. Ian, next
You're
question.
gonna have to explain that maybe after the show.
Yeah, I don't know what that is either.
Yeah.
You're from Winnipeg. My gosh, you've got to learn.
I have no idea what that is, but now I'm not sure it's appropriate right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so think about an English swear word that you really wouldn't want to say too much publicly and multiply it by 10.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
Ian, next question.
How do dealers manage all the stuff they have? And how do they decide if they need to or don't need to manage something that they have technology-wise? Because we all know dealers buy a bunch of bongles at every event, all kinds of technology, and they go, okay, well, yeah, it's the latest thing, but they have all this. Like, but how do they manage all that and decide what they don't have and that they may need? So go ahead, Tiffany.
I think it's going to be, first of all, how do they decide what they need? And I think the need is different for every store. First off, it's what is the model of our store? So, do we have BDCs? Do we have advisors? How many advisors do we have in the lane? Do we have assistant advisors? Do we have cashiers? So based on that store, it's recognizing where are my fail points. And I think that it's important to look at your process from an internal standpoint. What do I need how do I need to lean on technology to better help my team members and support my team? But you also have to look at it from a customer standpoint, right? That's the piece we all too often, I think, miss. We map our process from an internal standpoint, but we don't map it from the customer's lens. So, you start out online, you call your own store, where are we failing? And then how can I use technology to help me in these fail points that I have? And then determining, prioritizing, what things do I do first and how to manage it. I think how to manage it, it's choosing technology that integrates with your other technology. right? If you have a tool that integrates with your other tools, so you only have to manage one thing that then speaks to all of your others, I think is the easiest way to manage it. So then you're leaning on less people to use it correctly. For example, with Brooke, we're integrating directly to the scheduling tool or into the DMS. You want to use, if you're going to use an assistant service scheduler, regardless of what it is, it needs to talk to everything else. So that way you only have to manage your scheduling tool or DMS to make sure that she's working appropriately. She or that assistant is working appropriately. So I think it's being smart about what do I need based on internally, but also from the customer standpoint, and choosing the tools that integrate so that it's less work for less people in the store, making it just that much easier.
Cool. Troy, what do you think?
So, I think there's that quote, the Peter Drucker quote, you can't manage what you can't measure. And I think in order to find out what's successful, you really do need to have some sort of analytics insight into what that is to make sure it's working, and stay on top of it. If the system that you're looking at has a dashboarding of some sort, you have to be on top of it. And a lot of dealerships get caught up in the moment and they're like, well, I'm so busy, I'm not going to manage this. But it's got to be that consistent piece, that on top of consistent training. Like whatever system you get, you can't just dump it and run. And Ian, with DealerFX and ourselves with our system, you can't have a massive change in the workflow, dump it on the staff, and like Jeff said, people they'll rather just quit. And so if people don't continuously adopt it to the point where it's part of their culture, it is going to end up getting kicked out. And so I think it's got to be managed. You have to look at the metrics and make sure that you're actually measuring what you're trying to do and see if it's successful. And then you got to keep training it until it's part of your ingrained culture. And that's whether that's after sales software or new vehicle or used vehicle software or anything. There's no technology that you can really truly just set and forget without some sort of continuous effort until it's part of your ingrained culture. Thanks
for that. Steven, what do you think?
I would say involve the stakeholders inside the store that are going to use the tool. Like, I know that I have worked for a couple startups that had really cool technology that was going to be incredibly helpful. At some show, GM signs up for it and then doesn't think about how, just what Troy said, like, you're throwing a giant rock in the pool and what that ripple effect is, right? And it doesn't have to be a huge technology piece. If you're just buying one little thing, you could be changing the whole ecosystem. And so I think if you're at a store, I would say I've started seeing this at a couple of the groups we work with. They actually have somebody that's their whole job is to deal with vendors, and not just deal with vendors to, do the Heisman, but to actually learn so that they can bring new technologies to the owner, the dealer principal, or GMs with some sort of context of how good, bad, indifferent, what it's like. But I would say, what I've seen a couple times in my lifetime is when people sign up, they don't tell people that they've signed up in the store. The vendor shows up and they're like, hey, we got this cool thing. And they're like, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. Or B, like, really think about that process. Who is going to be affected by this? And then talk to them about, will this help you? This is what it's going to do. Do you think there's benefit to it? Right? Not just making the decision because it's cool and shiny and fun and it sounds good, and it probably is good at some level. But again, if the people aren't using it right, it's not going to work. So
yeah, I mean, I had a situation.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, to emphasize Stephen's point, though, the other thing, not just involving stakeholders, but understanding that, especially with after sales, the way that some dealers have their shops set up for technician pay, if these guys are getting paid on a flat rate, I mean, let's face it, if you can sit there and tell a technician they can make more money if they do something and prove that, they're more likely to adopt it. But conversely, if you try to give them a new technology that's for the betterment of the dealership or the customer experience, but slows them down 10% and takes money out of their pocket, they are absolutely going to kick that thing to the curb. So you have to involve the stakeholders, and I just wanted to underline what Stephen said because it was really critical.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that was interesting as I was working with Service Drive personnel was that the reason they didn't like the tool is they felt they were recommending service that just wasn't being presented. So when we explained to them that really they knew whether it was even being presented to customers, that was a big deal for them because they were confident that it was being done. Before it was like, oh, I filled out this recommendation, then it just sort of went in a trash can. So that a lot of it was just a lack of communication between the different people, even in the service side of the business of that store, which was quite interesting. But go ahead, Jeff.
Well, you know, it's very interesting what you mentioned there, Stephen, as well, is the fact that many times they go to these shows, and shows are now starting to ramp up, of course, with the NADA coming up next month. And GM or dealer principal signs up at the cocktail reception or the many parties later, and then they come back and they don't even remember that they signed up for it. And
or that they already have two products that already do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in the old days of the car business, you went into the back closet and you saw all this stuff on the wall covered in dust over the years that somebody bought. And of course, this question came up because nobody really knows what's there, because who does a really deep dive into the annals of their storage systems to see how many things that they actually have. So it's a very interesting challenge. Gail, what's your opinion on this? Surprise.
No, that's okay. I am actually in the process of leveraging technology to drive a substantial amount of sales in our business. So I think it's really important that you use technology. I mean, you don't need to. I think you can run most businesses and do things in old school manners, but in the world we live in today, if you want the revenue to come in, you need to leverage technology, whether it's in service sales or even what we do, in order to drive sales. It's just the way the world works, and it creates better communication. It's easier for the consumer, right? Because consumers look at content and they consume content through technology, right? That's the only way that they consume content and how they do things. And so you really need to find some of those new technologies that'll drive your business for you.
Well, yeah, there was a great example from the Super Bowl ads. The one for, I think it was Coinbase. The whole ad was just a QR code dancing around the screen. There was no other content generated. So it was a very low cost to run the ad, but supposedly the uptake was massive because of the amount of people using mobile phones when they're watching on whatever screen they're watching. So it was really interesting to see a very low-tech ad, which was basically just different colored QR codes moving around like Pac-Man. It was really interesting. But go ahead, Jeff. Thanks, Gail.
So how can we leverage technology in another spot? Because dealers are there's so many people accessorize their cars, and some brands more than other. Of course, you get people with Porsches and Jeeps and certainly trucks that accessorize their cars, and that a large dealers really don't sell much of that. How can a dealer?
Can I answer that?
No, I'm not finished. Go ahead.
I really want to answer that because this really drives me crazy. We're going to start selling this now. So dealers that sell accessories and parts and all those cool things you can add to your car, if they just loaded their catalog into the e-commerce solution in Facebook and Instagram, their sales would skyrocket. So right now it's a $25 billion industry. And in the next 2 years, e-commerce is going to go to 80 billion on Facebook. So if you have a parts department or an accessories department and you don't have a catalog on those platforms tied to an e-commerce store, you're losing out on millions and millions and millions of dollars. So we actually, we have been trying to find dealers that want to start doing that because we know how to do it. We just need to set it up for them. But I can't believe more dealers don't do that. It's crazy.
You may want to take a look at a piece of software. They just launched in the Canadian market, but they've been in the U.S. market for quite a while. The company is called Revolution Parts, and they have the entire catalog. We actually just launched a store in Ontario with this. that you can buy parts up to from 1993 for vehicles based on inventory. I'm sure they have the back-end data from the OEM that you could then plug into any other site. The thing that's cool about it is, and you hit this right on the head, parts, I mean, the standard joke in the car industry is you call the parts department from within the store and you get parts, can you hold?
Oh yeah.
That's the service. Like, I'm not kidding. So, I mean, from a point of view of parts, and I'll use an example of a dealership that I work with in the Edmonton market. They had a dedicated guy. That's all he did. He had his own booth in the showroom. So after the car was sold, he would basically sell parts from a paper catalog, you know, and he had examples of trucks with whatever. They would average somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 in accessory sales per vehicle in that market.
I'm not.
And they just had a guy who did that. That's all he did. That was his job. He's like the finance manager, but for parts. Like in Harley, I'm sure Jeff can speak to that. But go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah, actually, I'll ask Troy this in a minute because Troy, a dealer I used to work for, the Harley dealer, had such a process. And bikes, Harley's probably more than anything else. The accessory side of sales is almost pretty close to 40 to 50% of their net profit, and they have to have processes. And this one dealer I had does have an e-commerce parts site, but Troy, you know, what's your opinion on this? Obviously, Gail just hit the nail on the head.
Oh, you know what? Just like you know, mentioning the Harley example, and I know Gail, if I recall from a previous one, you used to have a Jeep or a Wrangler, right? So Jeep owners, Harley owners, you know, those vehicles seldom leave stock. I actually had to get a set of wheels and tires for my wife's SUV, and the amount of takeoff rims and tires that were brand new, that were available just on Facebook Marketplace from customers who, from the store, lifted their trucks and got new wheels and tires. So there's brand new OEM wheels and tires available by sets of 4 with no wear. I think that the market is definitely there, and the gross profit is such a to your point, Jeff, with the Harley example, the gross profit is such a benefit to the dealership. They really have to start that as part of their process, and that Harley story, you know, making it part of the delivery process to say, here's your parts guy, here's a catalog, here's a business card, here's how you order parts online. It's that simple to get that ball rolling.
Well, you know, and Gail mentioned that, getting the catalog, because now with all this online sales, and as the pandemic turns into an endemic, and one day, God willing, it disappears, people will come back in a greater extent to the store. But that online process, there's no service introduction, there's no accessory sales. So the person gets their Jeep delivered to them or whatever, and immediately drives down to the local accessory place, or even better, goes online and checks it. And it's something that got to improve. Now, I know Stephen has an opinion on that, but his system just crashed. So we'll ask him all the questions when he oh, nope, he disappeared completely. But that's
I'd like to just add a point here, because I think that what Gail said was just spot on and brilliant, and something that more stores need to pay attention to. So we have a partnership with an OEM where, you know, we go in and we train the stores that are signing on for their digital retailing platform. And so we're working with these stores all across the country every day with the salespeople sitting at the desk, taking the ups, sitting down, and in the showroom going through that digital retailing tool. Because the stores that are doing it right, it's not just about the online experience, but when that customer, all customers start online, we know that. When that customer does ultimately come into the store, they're sitting down and hopefully picking up where they left off. That's the point, right? So they're sitting down with their salesperson. The salesperson's pulling the customer up on that platform and saying, okay, the last step that you left on was, you know, you landed on this vehicle. You have already submitted your trade information. It's back there being looked at with our used car manager now. The next step would be this. The next step is that they're sitting there with the customer. That's the point of these tools. If we simply included parts and accessories in that experience when the customer does come in and they're sitting in front of them, as long as we teach our people how to leverage information or go through with the customer the accessories that are available, we will sell more accessories. The reason that we're not is because we're simply not asking, right? If the store my husband brought his truck would have offered him the truck bed cover right there during the sales process, he would have purchased from that store. They did not. We left. He did research for a week or two and bought something off of, I don't know, Amazon. I don't even remember what it was. But it was something kind of crazy. And it was, we're missing out on so much simply by not making that a part of the process. So you want to load those into your digital retailing tool for when the customer's shopping online, but you also want to do it when they're there in front of you, completing the steps to their process.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about this from a point of view, and recently I was looking for a buddy of mine who wants a high-end convertible, and I was looking at some of these really high-end processes online, and the one that stuck out to me was the Ferrari site, where there's so many options that basically the site slows down to a crawl, but they're not providing options. Like, what would you want to add to this car? And I compare that to whether it be Nissan or Honda or GMC or pick the brand, they're not really doing that at scale. They're not really, making it easy for that customer to say, yeah, I want to change the rims, or yeah, I want to add, to your point, like a protection package with all-weather mats or a truck liner or whatever it might be. And really, that's a huge missed opportunity. When I sold cars, it used to surprise me because that was always part of my process. Listen, people who buy this vehicle, they tend to want these accessories, whether it be step bars or whatever. And it would be amazing to me that a lot of the people I work with were scared of that because they didn't then want to have a discount on the accessories as part of the negotiation. But I was like, well, if the customer wants to add, eyelashes to the front of the car or whatever you want to call it, yeah, that's possible, right?
And frankly, eyelashes are one of the biggest selling accessories you can find. Tiffany, I have to tell you, your programmers have to program into Brooke that when somebody calls in and wants a rad lift kit, that she'll know what it is.
I think you might be right.
and not set them up with a radiator.
And if you're curious about that eyelash, that's an actual company. They were on Dragon's Den trying to sell it. So it's these eyelashes that you could attach to the front of your headlights. And it was really funny because during the demo, it fell off the car.
Aww.
But go ahead, Jeff. It's my turn, I think. Addressing the elephant in the room, what do you predict will happen with after sales as EVs grow, especially with the auto updates over the air? And I'll have to note that I am seeing more and more Teslas in the local market with roof rails and even roof boxes, which I haven't really seen historically with Tesla customers. So what do you think on EV and after sales?
As you mentioned that, I have to cut in here. I saw one yesterday, a Model 3 lowered, fat tires, fender flares, spoilers front and back. So somebody's jumping in there, and it ain't Tesla.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm amazed when you look at sort of off-roaders, even when you look at sort of some of these older Porsche SUVs, people are turning these into sort of like off-road things. So anyway, go ahead. Let's start with Troy.
I think that if we look at the adoption of the EV market, is that even if it's in its best iteration, they're still selling ICE cars now. Those cars are lasting longer than ever. There will be a need for a traditional, mechanic alongside the EV. So if anything, instead of just having a service model that you have to adapt and eventually morph into an EV model, you're going to have two running side by side for a long time. And so if a vehicle that's sold today lasts, 15 years, we're talking about no rush to get rid of that model. I think that's going to be just another, like in the case of Tesla, you're just buying a battery pack. So now you're selling parts and a little bit of labor versus selling a lot of labor and a little bit of parts. I still think the model will be the same for, at least the generation that we're all still going to be in the automotive industry anyway.
Thanks for that. Tiffany?
Yeah, I totally agree with Troy. I think I agree that that's going to be the case. I also see a lot more Teslas on the road. I have some in-laws that are in auto that I never thought would drive Teslas that do. So I think we need to prepare for the future, but I don't think the future is going to be, isn't as close as maybe some might predict, right? So I think we need to prepare for more people buying those types of vehicles. But I think it's going to be a long time where we're running side by side.
Interesting. Gail, you want to comment? Since we lost the recall rabbit?
Are you saying just with like strictly electric vehicles or hybrids?
I think electric vehicles and hybrids, I think they're very competitive. Like I was talking on the show, I think it was last week, about the plug-in EV / hybrid Ferrari for $1 million. And I was
So
like,
I have a hybrid plug-in Wrangler, and this is the first time they made it, and I bought it. And I like it. I mean, I barely use gas, which is amazing because I just bop around town and I plug my car in. But I will tell you this, my electric bill has skyrocketed. So it's like pay for gas or pay for electric. It's the same thing on my hybrid. I don't think there's a difference. I'm still spending the same amount of money. But in regards to accessories, it's the same thing, right? So the same stuff you can buy for a hybrid Wrangler, you could buy for a gas Wrangler. Like there's no, I mean, if that was the question in the beginning, there's no
limitation. You can still buy that crazy grill that looks like an angry boy or something.
You can still buy everything. You can deck it out the same way. You can put like all the things on it. There was really no difference.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
As soon as you put a lift kit, 35-inch knobby tires on it, your electric range drops down to like 5 miles.
Right, probably. But yeah, no, as far as I know, I haven't, when I asked the dealer, they told me there really was no difference.
Interesting. So from a point of view of, as we move towards that, say, hybrid / gas / combination, and I think the Deloitte video was talking a little bit about that, about how you're going to have ICE engines in rural environments for a long time because of infrastructure, and then maybe gas electric in cities, probably more on the electric side, but maybe a little less as you see that the government's trying to figure out how to tax those vehicles, because as gas drops off, they're going to have to figure that out. What do you think that's going to look like, Tiffany?
I'm sorry, I dropped sound for a second there.
No worries. So do you think, as we see, let's just say 50% electric and 50% gasoline? I mean, obviously in Charlotte, there's probably not a lot of electric infrastructure. I mean, how do you see that looking at sales and after sales? Like, what do you think?
I don't really know what to expect. I mean, I think that right now, when you consider EV in cities, especially looking at like Charlotte is what I'm used to. So there's not a lot of people driving around here driving electric vehicles. There's nowhere to charge except for the IKEA. And so I'm not sure it's going to have an impact on us for a while. So I don't really know what to expect. I mean, that's kind of the best answer I have for you right now.
No problem. Well, we will be having an EV show a little later in the year. We're going to hopefully corral some OEMs of various types, and I'm hoping to get the guy from Damon Motorcycles on. It's an AI motorcycle, which is kind of interesting, electric. But anyway, Jeff, we're almost out of time, so any final thoughts?
Well, I have a couple final thoughts. We should get some software engineers and raise some money to do software updates on EVs, such as sounds like the Millennial Falcon or something like that, or an X-Wing fighter as you drive by in your Tesla. That would be pretty good. And I'm also very sad that Stephen dropped off, because I was going to mention to him that we have a good friend of the show that's an EV person, deep EV, and they were offended that somebody called an update from Tesla a recall. And I wanted to ask Stephen's opinion on recalls on EVs. But
did you hear about the fart noise that's been banned on Teslas?
Can you imagine that coming up to a light, having it farting? But anyways, thank you all for attending. We appreciate it. Tiffany, I apologize for as I'm flailing myself on my sword here. As we progress more and more into the non-live show world, we're too used to guests there. So thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your input, especially at the last minute blinded. So thank you.
Yeah,
Troy,
no
as
problem.
always,
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And Troy, thank you for being here. And
thanks, everybody.
All the best. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
There we go. We're out.